So this week TNA brought us Lockdown. Not as a pay-per-view, but as a steel cage themed Impact. The idea took a little getting used to for me, but overall, I'm okay with this. They just moved to a new network, a smaller network. They're in the Friday night death slot, so they have to do everything humanly possible to get eyeballs on the screen. And considering the hit their viewership took when they moved to the new network, they probably weren't going to be making money on pay-per-views anyway. So, turning Lockdown into a TV special might not be a bad idea. However, I do think that TNA dropped the ball on getting the word out. Not only that Lockdown was going to be a TV special now, but also that it was going to happen months earlier than it usually does. They really didn't make that big a deal out of it, never mentioned it on Impact until the week before, and even then the build-up was kind of questionable. They should have been hyping this up since the premiere Impact on Destination America, but they didn't bother. So when they went on the air this week and called this one of the biggest shows of the whole year, I really didn't buy that. Now, having said this, they could have earned some goodwill here and raised the excitement level if they went out there, delivered a hell of a show, and blew the roof off the place. Unfortunately, that didn't quite happen either. We open with this tag title match with the Hardys and the Revolution. Not an awful match by any stretch, but nothing really remarkable either. I don't like tornado rules in the first place. I think they just make for chaotic matches, which really didn't help this. But even taking that out, I thought the match was kind of pedestrian. There weren't any real standout moments, it wasn't terribly exciting, in fact I thought it started to drag towards the end. Honestly, this match almost felt like it went too long. Now, the Jeff Hardy spot post-match, crotching himself on the cage door, falling onto the ring steps, that was insane. But that one spot was more interesting than anything that happened during the match itself. Then there's Kong and Havok, a match that TNA hyped up more than any knockout match in recent memory, although not enough for them to appear on the Go Home show for some reason. I had concerns about this one. I wasn't sure if their styles were going to complement each other, and I don't think I was entirely off base. They tried to do some interesting things with no-selling each other's moves and trying to top each other with the chokeslam and stuff, but it wasn't as exciting as you might think. It was kind of slow at times, it didn't really get out of first gear, and it was surprisingly short too. This kind of felt like half of a match, like it was just starting to get interesting with them finally breaking out their bigger moves and then suddenly it was over. I got the impression that they were holding back here so they could top this in a rematch down the line. But on a show you're calling one of your biggest of the entire year, in a match billed as an irresistible force versus a movable object type of thing, is that really the right time to be holding back? When it was over, I just kind of shrugged and went, that's it? Don't hate me, but I came out of this match feeling a little underwhelmed. Well, they finally showed Angelina Love's reaction to Velvet Sky getting fired. 2 weeks too late, but they showed it. And it was pretty funny, actually. She's giving Velvet this phony sympathy while smirking behind her back, and then Velvet leaves and she's like, ugh, finally. That was my reaction, too. So, in 2014, Angelina returns to the company to reform the Beautiful People, and now, less than a year later, she's happy that Velvet's gone? Was that the writers subtly admitting that the Beautiful People reunion really didn't work? Because they really threw it under the bus here. A very fitting way for that gimmick to end, if you ask me.
This is how the world ends. Not with a bang, but with a whimper.
That brings us to Eric Young versus Bobby Roode. You know, considering that this had more build-up than most of the other matches on the card, you'd think there would have been more to this match. This was another one that was a lot shorter than it should have been, and it was a good match, but it never reached the intensity level that it really needed to, in part because it was so short. The storyline is that Eric Young stabbed his best friend in the back, a guy who was like his brother, destroying a 15-year friendship. And for a lot of the match, that psychology just didn't carry over very well. Where was the seething hatred here? It got a little better when they brought the chair in, but even then I never got the impression that they really loathed each other. In terms of emotion and psychology, this should have been more like the Angle Anderson cage match from 2010, and it just didn't get there. It felt more like these guys really don't like each other than these guys fucking despise each other. I did like the ending with, "You were my brother, you son of a bitch." That was a nice touch, but generally, I just didn't feel like they went to the extremes to sell this angle that the match really called for. Then we got Spud and Mandrews versus Tyrus. I like Spud and Mandrews a lot. I think there could be money in them both together or as singles guys, but I still think Tyrus is a complete waste of time. He's slow, boring, unathletic. He's really just not that good. Spud and Mandrews are doing everything here. Spud had the spot of the night with that awesome dive off the top of the cage. That was awesome. EC3's antics outside the cage were entertaining with the scalping stuff, and between the three of them, they managed to elevate this segment somewhat, but Tyrus was just not bringing much to the table here. I really question whether having the face's job to this guy was the smart way to go, and also, I have to say, not a great way to showcase Mandrews in this match either. So let me get this straight. Robbie E challenges Brooke to an obstacle course race. He cheats to get ahead. He still can't beat her, loses to her, and on top of that, the segment is deemed so utterly worthless that it doesn't even air during the actual show. Robbie E, man. I swear, every time I think this guy could not be a bigger joke, he finds a way to prove me wrong.
You are one pathetic loser.
Can you please give Brooke something interesting to do now, TNA? She deserves better than this. Lethal Lockdown, I felt kind of ambivalent about. This was another one that was hurt by time constraints. I don't know why they bothered with the earlier angle with the heels banging up Gunner's arm. It really didn't factor into the match that much. And the match itself wasn't anything amazing either. They did some interesting things with the trash can, but it never really got that brutal, really. And the story wasn't terribly compelling. I will credit them for at least telling a story, but were we supposed to be on the edge of our seats wondering if Lashley would come out when we all knew he would? That's not how it came across to me. I thought the whole thing was pretty predictable, actually. Also, the stakes didn't feel very high because there was nothing really on the line here. The faces win, the heels lose, and nothing really changes. So, in the future, I really think TNA should ask the network for a 3-hour special if they're going to do this again, or at the very least an overrun, because a 2-hour show plus commercials really takes away that big event feeling that Lockdown is supposed to have. Matches that should have had a lot of time didn't get it. None of them were anything you're going to be talking about a week from now. There was nothing that outright sucked here, and every match did at least have something that was good about it, but if I had paid full pay-per-view price for that show, I would have felt like I didn't get my money's worth. With Lockdown being just a steel cage-themed Impact now, maybe asking them to deliver on the level of a Big Four pay-per-view isn't really fair, but that didn't stop me from feeling kind of unimpressed. It was good. I just didn't think it was anything special.